Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jan Thomas. I am a training program manager with the Center for Technical Development, or CTD. And I just want to take a quick minute here to kick us off for our webinar. The Center for Technical Development, or the CTD, is a group in Washington State that helps district staff and partners with training and professional development opportunities. So I'm really pleased that our partners with WSDA have brought this webinar series to us to help host. I'm just going to say a couple of words about logistics here. So we are in a webinar format. So today we won't be using the chat feature to ask questions. We will instead be using that Q&A box. You'll see it there as sort of a square call out box with a question mark in it. So if you have questions throughout the presentations or at the end when we have kind of a dedicated Q&A, please go ahead and type those into the Q&A section at any time. And Danny will be moderating those and helping us get those questions answered. You might see a raise hand feature, but that's not the way that we're going to do things today. So please do use that Q&A box for any questions you have. We are also recording this webinar and we'll be posting it on our CTD website as well as the channels through WSDA and the Soil Health Initiative. So I think that's everything I had to say. I'm going to turn it over to Danny to introduce our topics. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jan, and thanks for everyone in the audience today for being here for our second webinar of our annual Making Soils Data Actionable series. I'm Danny Gilardi, Senior Soil Scientist at the Washington State Department of Agriculture, and I am so excited to welcome you all here today to talk yet again about soils data. All month long, the Washington Soil Health Initiative is showcasing projects across Washington that use soils data to make real-world on-farm decisions. Today, you are here to learn about precision agricultural equipment and data. A quick announcement, however, is that the recording from last week's webinar on compaction is already up on our website. And next week at the same time, we'll be talking about nitrogen credits and fertilizer budgets. Today, we have Steve Mantle, Nate Krause, and Linda Neunzig to describe their roles in a public-private partnership to democratize soils data and precision agricultural technology. I will just give some quick introductions and then we'll get started. Steve Mantle is founder and CEO of Ag Insights data company Innovate.ag. Prior to launching Innovate, Steve spent almost 20 years in leadership roles at tech companies, including Microsoft. Linda Neunzig is a Snohomish County farmer and manages the agricultural program for Snohomish County, which includes policy, economic development, ombuds, farmland preservation, and food systems efforts. And finally, Nate Krause is the owner and operations manager of Swans Trail Farms in Snohomish, Washington. For everyone in the audience, there will be a Q&A at the end, so feel free to post your questions into the Q&A feature as we go. And to all three speakers, thank you so much for being here today. Linda, feel free to take it away. You're muted, Linda.
There we go. Thank you. There's our next slide. I'm Linda Neunzig, as you said. Thank you very much. I am the Agriculture Coordinator and Division Manager for the Agriculture Office for Snohomish County. I've been doing this for 18 years, and it is a position that is 100% about supporting our agricultural sector. It is an extremely high priority of the county executive and the county council to keep our farms viable and in production and making sure our farmers can make money farming. Next slide, please. So this is a program that we started originally during COVID. We had $1 million of COVID funding, and we put it all towards agriculture and looking at what are the possibilities around ag tech and Snohomish County farmers, because we are not large farmers in the Midwest or even Eastern Washington with huge tracts of land that we can bring really expensive equipment on. But what about farms our size? What is available for our farmers without them having to put anything at risk to be able to try this new technology, see if it works for them, and then at some point be able to buy it for themselves? That program has evolved now to where we are creating something that doesn't exist. We're creating something that allows our farmers to have access to the data that they would not otherwise have at no cost to them. Soil moisture sensors, and Nate will talk a little bit about the advantage to having the soil moisture sensors, and an equipment library, which is really something that is brand new and going to be very exciting. Doing the soil mapping with the soil optics, they can go through and every single inch of the field will be mapped. They can then take that information that Steve does his magic with and comes back to them with something that makes a lot of sense and tells you what you have here, what you're lacking here, what you really don't need over here. And with that, they can then do variable rate application with fertilizers. With the soil moisture sensors, we're going to be able to tell what is the soil moisture at the roots. As farmers, we're all used to kicking the dirt, and does it look wet? It looks different color. It must be wet. Oh, tree looks kind of dry. The grass is looking dry. Let's just go ahead and water it. With the soil moisture sensors, we can now find out exactly what the plant needs. You know what? There's a ton of water at the roots. Or we can see that every couple inches, you can see that it's getting drier and drier. Then it's time to put water on it. And how much water do you put on it? We're also creating an ag tech equipment lending library. So some of this equipment, it's too new for a farmer to experiment with, or it's not something that they would need for a long period of time. Something like the burrow. The burrow is autonomous. I think they're going to talk about that a little bit more later. Steve will probably talk about it. So if you can take that burrow, drop it off at a farmer's farm, he uses it for, or she uses it for whatever the need is at that time. A good example that was given to us by one of our farmers was fertilizing Christmas trees. Put 500 pounds of fertilizer on the top of this thing. It will automatically follow you. It'll train on the back of your legs and follow you. He can be using a coffee can and spreading fertilizer around the base of each tree and not have to run back and forth to get fertilizer. You don't have two people. You just have the burrow and one person doing it. So you're saving money and you're saving time. So that'll be available for farmers to just check it out when they need it. We'll have two of those in operation. Next slide, please. So some of the other really big projects that we have going on in Snohomish County right now, and some of you may have heard about them. And one of them is the Snohomish County Food and Farming Center. It will consist of a year-round indoor farmers market, a vegetable and fruit processing facility, an aggregation and distribution facility, and a commercial kitchen to do value-added production. These are all scaled for small to mid-sized farms. We'll be able to do co-packing. We'll be able to aggregate different farmers' product together to meet larger orders. And it should be something that will truly make an impact on our food systems and our farms. We have steering committees of farmers that are working diligently to make sure that what we build is exactly what they need. This is one more step in making sure that our farms are economically viable. Next slide, please. This is our annual Focus on Farming and Focus on Forestry event. This year will be our 20th year, which is hard to imagine that I've been doing this for 20 years and for a conference to still be going on that many years later. So this is purely an educational conference. Last year we did a presentation on our program, which is pretty exciting. We've done a tech focus numerous times. And as a matter of fact, we also have a soils track that's been very well attended. So if you get the opportunity, look up Focus on Farming, and that'll be in November. And I think that's all of my slides. Is that it, Steve?
It is.
Okay,
And
I'm going to hand it off to Nate then.
yeah, Nate, it's all you. Tell us a little bit about Swans Trail.
Well, hey, first of all, thank you for having us to present today. I'm super excited to talk to you guys about what we've been doing here at Swans Trail Farms. Swans Trail Farms is a direct farm market. So basically meaning that we grow everything that we sell. directly to the customer. We grow 3 different things. We grow apples, we have pumpkins and strawberries. The farm is about 170 acres or so, and we do a spring festival where we invite people to come out and pick strawberries and experience the farm. And then we have a summer season where it's basically parties. We have an event facility here. And then we have our big fall season, which is the pumpkin patch and apple orchard. Again, people coming out from Seattle and the surrounding areas to experience the farm and to enjoy their time here out in the great outdoors. And I think that's oh, there's our family there. So it's a rather large family. In fact, we're kind of missing somebody too. So there's one more added on from there. But we've been working with Steve for the past 4 years. And he is by far one of the most knowledgeable people in tech in our area, and has got some really innovative things that we can use and experience, and hopefully you guys will gain something from this.
Thanks, Nate. So let's talk a little bit about what do you grow out there out at Swans Trail?
We have strawberries, apples, and pumpkins.
Awesome. I am just fiddling with. There we go. Thank you, Zoom. So this is 4 years ago, I think, almost to the day, isn't it, Nate?
Yeah, we look good.
Yeah, we're looking good. It's scary looking in the mirror now, but it's clear who the better looking of the two of us is there. It's the dude with the cap. But so this was us out in Nate's orchard. Tell us a little bit about the orchard, because having orchards out in Snohomish County are frankly on the west side of the mountains in Washington State is a rarity. What do you have out there? How old's the block? What are some of the challenges that you face there?
So we are definitely, there's only a few apple orchards over in our area. We're one of the larger ones that grow apples. And when we say large, we're talking like about 6,000 trees, high density orchard. And that's obviously nothing compared to what Eastern Washington has, but it's a real challenge to grow. When you think of Washington, you think of apples. Everybody in Washington can grow apples, but the east side is where all the apples are at. We are on the west side, and we grow, the majority of what we have right now is Honeycrisp and Cosmic Crisp. We grow about 8 different varieties, but those are the main ones we have. There's a serious amount of challenge to grow out here. Just because of the amount of space that there is. First of all, we don't have large blocks like they do in Eastern Washington, large areas. It's so populated out in this area. And secondly, most of all, is moisture. Fire blight is something that Eastern Washington deals a lot with. We really don't have that problem over here. Ours is a fungus, and anthracnose is probably our biggest problem that we have here in the west side of Washington, and we deal with that a lot. And there's constantly taking out trees, constantly cutting out large branches, trying to mitigate that anthracnose. We have to spray a lot for each time it rains during the spring and summer. We have to spray every time to keep that fungus from developing in our trees.
And I think you said you have Cosmics, Honeys, and Ambrosia. Are those the 3 varieties?
Yeah. We have well, the main ones we grow are Honeycrisp and Cosmic Crisp, and then we also have Ambrosia. We're trying the Red Reuben. We're giving that a try to see. And so we try different varieties to see if the west side can take it or not. We've tried Pink Lady, can't grow those. Gala, we can't have those over here. Just too much fungus, too much. They're too susceptible to anthracnose. And so Zestar is one that we'd really like to grow because it's such an early apple, but we can't grow it. It won't grow in this climate very well. So.
And you, while you may not have 1,000 acres of apples, how much do you charge per pound for people to actually come out and pick their apples?
We charge $3.50 per pound. And so we may not have a lot of trees, but we get a premium price for it. There's no middleman. There's no, because people are coming out, they're either picking it off the tree and experiencing that with their family, or they'll be selling it in our country store. So what we do is we pick the tops off. And so all the tops from about 7 feet up, we pick those all off. They're about 10-foot trees. And so 3 feet of tree is what we pick, and that goes to our store, or it might be going to our cider mill. We have a cider mill here too, or those might be going to the cider mill making cider. And then the bottom 7 feet is what is getting picked by the customer. And so we have half bushel bags that they pick into, and they'll pick in there. So we'll sell anywhere from, in a day, we might sell, I think the most we've done is like 30,000 pounds in a day is what we've sold before. And it ranges from there.
Well, I'd say you definitely are. You may not have the scale, but you're the envy of Eastern Washington of the guys that do have scale, given that the apple industry is not getting $3.50 a pound.
Yeah.
Bring your own labor.
Yeah.
At this point,
Well,
so.
it's very it is hard to grow them here, though. That's the problem.
Right.
It's a rarity in this area. Because it's a rarity, then we can charge a premium for those people who are coming from Seattle. There's you go over to Indiana or Iowa, where they have few apples orchards there, and they're getting like $1.60 for you pick. But there's so many of them out there, it's not as much of a rarity for them. So.
Well, and a lot of what you have out there is it's not just apples and pumpkins and strawberries. It's animals. And I know how much you love animals.
Yes, they're great.
There's your favorite donkey there on the right-hand side. But you can see on the left-hand side, Ashley with Skagit Farmer Supply, who's one of the partners on this project. We'll talk a little bit about this yet. And she's a agronomist with Skagit, and really, I can't emphasize enough, partnering with agronomists on this program is really critical, along with obviously the grower that has the insight on what's happening in the field. And the other two gentlemen on there are Alston and Salvador, that were working as interns last year as part of the Ag AID project that brings together Washington State University, Oregon State University, Heritage University out of Yakima. And so they're part of paid internship, really on applying AI to data in ag. And so they were really enjoying kind of this field trip, kind of checking out Nate's world. So I'm going to do just a really super quick overview on, all right, how does Innovate tie to this? And basically for us, this company's about 5 years in. I started it in a act of partial insanity in the rearview mirror. But basically, it's about empowering growers with data and aggregating data from different sources, analyzing that and visualizing that, and bring that all together. And focusing on that to align with growers' challenges, which is ultimately increasing yields, not just on quantity, but critically on quantity, and helping manage on variability and yield gaps, and equipping them on tools and skills to navigate. And this is really, I think, the neat thing about how this project dovetails with Linda's vision, guided by the Snohomish County Ag Advisory Board, and bringing that all together. This is just kind of for context. I'm not going to talk about any of this mapping the remainder of our talk today, but some of the tech that we used out in Nate's fields in orchards to map the variability of the apples in terms of the counts, and uses a combo of LiDAR and vision, computer vision, so that he could not only look at the soil data, which we're going to delve into in deep because that's the point of today's webinar. But the subsequent crop health, if you will, inclusive of yield and canopy variability. Really now delving more into how do we collect this data on the soil side. And so it's using a spectrometer from a company called Soil Optics out of Canada. You can see it right there that's sitting on the front of this John Deere Gator. And the spectrometer is basically passively listening for gamma rays that naturally emit from the soil and associated with uranium, cesium, thorium, and I believe it's phos as the fourth one. So you drive this gator or whatever this is, the spectrometer is attached to across the field, basically in 40-foot swaths. You really only need to do this once every few years, unless there is a kind of massive erosion event like a river flooding or something along those lines. And then you end up with a map of what the variability is on those four elements the gamma rays and those associated with those four elements that I talked about. That then informs where you go and take soil samples, traditional soil samples, at a rate of 1 per 8 acres. But now rather than going and taking a bucket and throwing a little bit in here and kind of quote unquote randomly walking in, all right, let's take another spade and put a little bit here, mix it up and send it to the lab, you can actually see you have a statistically informed approach as to where you take your soil samples from. And then that ties into the spatial maps that you'll see in a minute. Those samples are 8 inches deep, and we basically have the lab run for all of these properties that you see here. So your texture, your macros, your micros, your pH, CEC, cation exchange, and some, yeah, that's basically it, right? And then apply that against this underlying map. Similar types of technologies are EC, electroconductivity, or EM, electromagnetic mapping as well. But this actually is not impacted by moisture in the soil, which EC and EM are hypersensitive to what your moisture is. And given that Western Washington has very little control over the soil moisture, given the rain conditions in Western Washington, it makes a lot of sense. So let's dive in deeper on this and have a discussion where Nate, if you want to mute, we'll just kind of delve in and talk a little bit about what we found out there. So this is mapping from, this is back in 2021. We're actually doing a remap here in the next couple of weeks. And we don't need to send the spectrometer through the field again. We're actually just going to resample in the locations where the sampling was done in the past. And then we'll send that into a NAPT certified lab. So let's zoom all the way into Swans Trail Farms. Now, what are the fun things about this farm? What do you see down the bottom right-hand corner? Wait, Nate, what is that? It almost looks like Washington State.
Yeah, we're so proud of it. That is the Washington State corn maze. So we've been doing that for, gosh, it's almost 30 years now. I think we've been doing it. 1996, 7 was our first year doing it. So we were one of the very first corn mazes in the nation doing any sort of shape of anything. It's been Washington State for that long. We haven't changed it. So it's school programs come out and they do Washington State history, Washington State geography, and learn all about our great state of Washington. So yeah.
So is this the satellite cheat sheet? Does it change each year in terms of the past?
That's right.
This is it? Oh man, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna put this to work for me this summer. All right, I love it. So here's a little more again on the soil samples piece. So again, 8 inches deep, and then no magic. We're using labs that are NAPT certified. In this case, we sent off to Northwest Ag out of Tri-Cities, Washington, Kennewick, Washington. And you can see one of the soil lab results that came back. Forgive the typo on the grower on this, but this is out in the pumpkin field. And so many of you would be familiar with these types of lab analyses that are coming back. And across the bottom, you can see basically the mapping out of the texture for one of those locations as well. So let's delve in a bit on the pumpkin field. And the interesting thing is the technology for the data collection hasn't changed that much over the last 4 years. Nate and I were talking about this morning, and Linda. But what has changed is the ability to kind of better analyze and visualize the data. And so we'll talk a little bit about how AI tools like Grok and ChatGPT and such kind of tie into this, and even this visualization. I was even shocked a little bit last night on how the visualization tools have evolved since we initially put these maps in front of Nate and team 4 years ago. So this is a view of Nate's fields. Maybe you can tell us a little bit, give us a background on back in 2021, your pumpkin kind of layout and how you were using these fields.
Well, it'd be really hard to remember. We rotate all of our crops and everything, so it'd
Right.
be really hard to remember exactly where everything is at. I will say that we do run a cover crop of oats, and then we go pumpkins, and then we go corn, sweet corn, and so we are rotating those crops. You can tell there's a couple of different things when you notice this, is that we bought property. If you go the further, I guess would be north, you'll notice that it's kind of that's all property that we purchased, and well, that we started farming. We didn't purchase it, my partner has it, and that probably was only farmed 1 year, I think. Otherwise it just had horses and just basically horses on it. We haven't had anything on it at all as far as farming goes. And so up north is that way. And then our apple orchard, the pumpkin, your pumpkins are all basically around where the coloring is that. But up north there a little bit that was new ground that you'll see.
Got it. So one of the things that jumps out here is there's some variability in the sand, right? So you can basically see your dark blue here, I think my pointer's showing, is roughly 31% sand, and then your red is 45% sand. And so you can see kind of a bit more sand up in these areas, not so much down in here. What shocks me actually looking at this is the high levels of organic matter up in here, like 8+% is kind of off the charts.
Yeah.
But
there were animals in that area for a number of years, and we hadn't touched it no one's touched it for years and years and years. It's just had animals on it. So
wow. All right.
And so it does. And so by looking at that, it's a point of, you can basically, when you look at all these different maps, and I know it's really confusing because it was confusing to me the first time I saw this, when Steve showed me, it was very confusing, but it basically will tell a history of your farm, and that's that's when you know it's legit, this stuff is, because you'll see where ditches were filled in, and so it's different type of soil where we push the ditch in, and all these different areas here and so when he talks about organic matter, well, I could tell you why there's so much organic matter, is because that's where we had all those animals for so many years there. So it's interesting.
And I mean, frankly, kudos to you. The fact that you've got 4% as the floor on organic matter is also really kind of blows me away. I mean, that's so many growers would be envious of that. So kudos. And
Yeah.
I mean, it ties back to this was originally a dairy, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Kinda
And so
way back when.
we pumped a lot of manure out on those fields for years and years too.
So this is a view that of leakability, and this starts to tie together the soil moisture sensor piece as well. And I should have called out earlier. So you can see where it says 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are basically where the spectrometry data on the gamma rays told us that to actually take the statistically informed soil samples, and then it then gets applied out to kind of the rest of the field. So you can see basically your leakability piece. The definition is over here on the right hand side, right? So the lower leakability value, the more likely it is that your water is going to leach through the soil relative to other parts of the field. And so this helps inform perhaps thinking on irrigation, or even what crops you may have may choose to have in the field, or parts of the field, or how you may segment it out. Any comments on that at all?
No.
Yeah. So pH and cation exchange. So you can see again kind of variability across the field on your pH, which ranges from 5.5 to 7.3. We'll get to kind of some insights courtesy of AI here in a minute. And then you're all familiar as an audience with cation exchange as to kind of the criticality of that as to unlocking nutrient availability to your plants. And then we look at your two flavors of nitrogen. On the left-hand side, NH4, and right side, your ammonium nitrate, and the variability of both across the field. And then your P and K in parts per million, as to the variability across the fields there as well. One thing typically I look at as well is, so you've got on the P side, 13 parts per million to 86 parts per million, basically. So what is that? 7x kind of spread. And on K, we've got 90 to 360, so a 4x spread. So the key on this is kind of thinking in terms of that variability, and if you're kind of below the line as to what the crop's needs are, like these are the places you can clearly identify where do you apply on a variable rate, where it's going to matter the most. And that's where companies like Skagit Farm Supply can come in with their Terrigator. We can feed these maps into them as shape files or GeoJSON files. And then in collaboration with their agronomy team, they apply a prescription as to what exactly is needed. And then finally, here's a calcium and magnesium piece as well. Not as big of a spread, but calcium certainly being a really critical one. So now this is a little on the fly, excuse me, but last night about 11 p.m., I took this data and said, I'm going to throw this into Grok and see what it has to say. And I was really kind of shocked with a little bit of training of Grok. And Grok, for those of you that may not be familiar with, is a competitor to ChatGPT. So that type of thing. ChatGPT didn't try it, but Grok tends to be a little more advanced at this point when it comes to kind of your deeper analysis, at least so I'm told. So it came back and provided, I said, given this data, what should the fertilizer schedule be for pumpkins? And so this is what it came back with. Now, again, agronomist first and grower first. Don't blindly trust AI because we know where that could all get us. But verify and then trust. But it came back with the thinking on the fertilizer schedule, where you kind of think about that even differently in different parts of the field, and then kind of what the final takeaways you can kind of see across there on the right-hand side on NPK, calcium, even delved a little bit into boron and said, all right, you've got some areas that are a little lower, has a micronutrient and zinc. And then even calls out, boy, you've really got some high zinc down in that southeast corner. And so that might be something where maybe you don't plant something in that corner because it's not going to do as well. And then it summarized basically the irrigation considerations to think about, assuming you have the luxury of the drip to control that. I think a lot of what you have out there is lines and hose reels, I think, in the pumpkins. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of a high level there. And then if we delve into strawberries, where you were going to have them that year, anything kind of jump out at you here that you want to comment on in terms of your rotations and how you think about strawberries, Nate?
The strawberry plant we're very, very new to strawberries. This is only our 5th year, our 6th year growing them. And so I'm really too early to really make a real good educated opinion or statement about the strawberries. I feel like they're not as we still are growing very, very well because it's all new soil to strawberries. And so it'll be interesting what happens later on with strawberries, because from what I've been told and talked to about is that your soil will start not having the nutrients and everything else that is needed to keep on growing those strawberries the way we're growing them right now. And so I'm too new at the strawberry fields to really make a good call on that one.
Yeah. Well, and you're rotating those two as well. Is that right or no?
Yeah, every 2 years we're rotating. So they produce for 2 years, and then we tear them out.
So one of the things that jumps out at me here is on the sand. Look at the spread compared to what we were looking at on the pumpkin side, 36 to 80%. So you can see up in that top corner as well as kind of down that bottom left corner over here. You've got like some really high sand levels, and of course from a watering perspective, that could kind of inform a different watering approach, or perhaps I don't think this entire thing you did as strawberries at the time, but where you might kind of double down on strawberries versus walking areas or whatever, right?
Yeah, you can really tell the sand. You can tell the sand is from. There's a river that is to the west of our picture. There's a river that sits right there, and we're going to have a lot of sand from floods coming out because it does flood out here. And so we're gonna have a lot of sand in those spots. When you see those, when you see the 70 and that sort of thing, the red areas, those are more than likely areas where there was a high sand that came through. I mean, it's right next to the river. There's a road and then there's a river right there. So there's going to be high sand right there.
Isn't this the neighbor's yard right here?
Yeah, that's the neighbors. Yeah, that's their place.
Where the girls are on the trampoline. I mean, you can literally, that's kind of wild that it literally just pops that clearly.
Yeah.
Organic matter, again, looks really healthy. No 8s in there, but still something to be really happy with the 1.75 all the way up to 5s. Leakability, again, where lower the leakability value, more likely is the water is going to leak through the soil faster. So kind of helpful to kind of see that as well. And it is it takes into account texture and organic matter. Your pH and cation exchange, pH is pretty tight. Looks pretty rocking in here. And CEC. Then you can see, I believe this was pre-applications because it was April 1st, so you wouldn't have applied in April, obviously, right? It's still too wet. So this is pre-plant nitrogen levels. across the field in terms of pounds per acre. Again, you can kind of see, yeah, like on your NH4, like you're doing ranging from 20 to 70. So pretty good spread there, and something you can take into account in terms of applications. Your phos and potassium as well. You can see some similarities in terms of how that looks there on that layout. Not a massive spread on these pieces. And then your calcium and mag, more of a spread. I mean, you're looking at roughly 4x on calcium and mag, not 1.7. So again, what does Grok say? So it took in that whole data set, and we said, all right, strawberries are going in here, and came back with a set of recommendations as to, great, based on what's in there, this is what you're going to need in terms of pre-plant, mid-season. It came back with so much, I had to kind of parse it out, but it did have some kind of recommendations, even in terms of timing as to, maybe it even says it in here somewhere, but the spreading it out more in those sandy areas, and distributing it more often, perhaps by fertigation, given that the percolation rate is quite high, to ensure that it stays within the root system and avoid runoff and so on. Apples. So this is right up your alley now, as your baby. Any comments when you look at this? I mean, you're looking at a bit of variability. Your main, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you look at our map here, you're going to mostly concentrate more on your south end. We have in our parking lot, we decorated up above, in the north end there, we have like 3 rows, but we basically just use them for decoration and parking dividers for when people come in as parking. Our parking goes about 10 acres out into the north end of our property. And so we're going to more concentrate on the south end, which is more so where the main orchard is, and that's where everybody goes to pick their apple trees. And we have expanded since 20. I bet we've added a few thousand trees since the time this was taken. Steve, you could probably go through what the sand is and everything else. You'll notice very similar in that. But one thing is, do you want me to talk about the watering, or do you want me to talk about any of that yet? What's that?
We've got a section on watering, but yeah, delve into it a bit now.
No, it's no problem. And so basically, that's what we have here is your south end. You're looking at right next to the road, and the river. You can see the Snohomish River sits right there, going kind of in that area. So it's very close to the river.
So yeah, I mean your leakability, you can see a bit on the variability and leakability, where it starts to get a little more interesting in here as well. Like your pH, again, you can compare the difference where we were looking at some of these things on say on the pumpkins earlier versus where Nate's really tightly managed the pH in the field. And your CEC, not a whole ton of variability in there, again, because it's been so tightly managed, particularly on a permanent crop. On your NH4 or your nitrogen all up, you can basically see your blue sections being low, need a boost, and your kind of low CEC and high sand zones are going to need more smaller and frequent applications. Remind me, are you doing fertigation at all out in the orchard?
No, we're all granule or foliar.
Yep, got it. Your P, you can kind of see in here that your low end values are going to need 30 to 50 pounds an acre. Your high still needs 0 to 20. And your K, your low end's going to need some upfront and then mid-season in your low CEC areas, particularly if fruiting lags. You want to share a little bit on kind of challenges with calcium and Honeycrisp and your learnings there at all?
Yeah, the Honeycrisp apple is probably the toughest. If you talk to most all apple growers, that is the toughest apple to grow.
The prima donna of apples, I think, right?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's like me. It's a lot like me, prima donna. It's really, really tough because they're very susceptible to bitter pit, which is a calcium deficiency in your tree, and because it doesn't have that calcium, you'll get the if you see the little black spots. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but basically kind of the black spots that kind of go into the apple and doesn't make it very good. And as you know, there's nothing wrong with the apple, but we can't sell it when there's bitter pit. And so what we have to do is take those bitter pit apples and they go to our cider mill and they get grounded up and pressed into cider, in which we sell to the people who visit here. And so we really concentrate a lot on calcium. We do a foliar spray. We do a lot of calcium applications, especially on those Honeycrisp apples. It's a great apple, but they're biennial. They have calcium deficiency. Whereas if you go with the Cosmic Crisp, you could run it over with a tractor and it still produces a bunch. You know, they're way easier to grow. And so calcium is big for us. And so this one, when Steve did his first one of the main things that we were really looking at was the calcium. That's big to make sure that we have calcium in those trees to avoid bitter pit.
And then boron was another one. It's a micronutrient that kind of pops up a little bit here in the, again, we've got the meme, what does Grok say? But does this, when you glance at this, does any of this resonate at all there? I mean, it's a lot of, there's a lot in there in terms of density.
Yeah, there is a lot of information here. The thing that we did, and we partnered with Washington State University when these all came out,
right?
Soil science is there, and him and I went through each one of these slides where there's boron, all these different slides that we went through, and he's the one who really said, hey, you may want to do this in this area. It was before any AI or anything like that. And you may want to, add more boron. You may want to add a little bit in this area. And I will say this is that as a farmer, what we're always doing is we're always wondering, right? I mean, it's always a wonder. Like you can't, there's nothing textual that we can touch that we can say, oh, we're doing this correctly. And when we're doing this type of scans and this type of work with technology, it definitely gives the farmer a peace of mind. I've always wondered, like, how's my pH? How's my, is it really, because when you take soil samples, it's not as precise. This is precision. This is precision ag right here. And so that's what Steve brings to the table, is agriculture that is precise. And that gives me the peace of mind, the non-worrying part, which is worth more than anything to me to have. And so when you look at Grog and what he says and everything like that, it'll help with that, knowing like, oh, this is what I need to do. That's the peace of mind I really, really want. And so that's what the Washington State University did for us.
Yeah. Shout out to Professor Gabe LaHue up there at out at Mount Vernon Station. Huge partner on this when we got this project going as a trial earlier. So you can kind of basically see that the irrigation considerations down there in the bottom right-hand corner, and kind of, tuning irrigation across in orchards is just really critical. And so this informed the placement of soil moisture sensors. You can basically see the HC down here in the bottom left-hand corner is Honeycrisp, and then Cosmix and Ambrosia. In terms of where we distribute these 3 soil moisture sensors that go down, I believe it was 1 meter. And you can see kind of at a glance over at the time of the screenshot, if the watering amount, is it in the kind of the green zone, or is it in the blue zone where there's a bit too much water? This was, I think, off season. And so where you can't control, and that, again, that's one of the things in Western Washington, and hats off to Nate for growing honeys in Western Washington, where it's hard to control the rain. But here's one of the charts that maybe you can speak to a little bit from July and August, as to kind of what kind of rain events and what you can see in drawdown. And I'll ask Nate to talk about that for just a moment. But that each of these lines, so this top line is basically saying in the top 4 inches of soil, basically, where did it hit? And then you can kind of see the subsequent 8-inch, 12-inch, 16-inch, 20-inch, and obviously the lower down in the soil, the less it will move due to those percolation rates. But how has this been helpful for you, and what kind of water savings have you seen and then we'll wrap a little bit on automation and open it up for Q&A.
Yeah. Real quickly, we had to adjust this. So when you see a blue, green, red, everybody's is going to be different depending on what your soil is. And so that's where the soil scans is all tied together. And so that's what your soil scans are going to be, the blue, red, and green. So we took about a month or so before we really figured out where our green is. And basically what I do, and this is all on my phone, is I just try to keep that line in the green. It's like a really, really bad video game where you're trying to keep that baby right in the green. And so we were watering, and similar to what Linda said right at the beginning, how do you figure out how much you're supposed to water? Well, you look at your plants, you dig down the soil, but again, it's not knowing. You don't know. You can't tell. And so when a tree starts looking bad, what do you do? Well, you throw more water. If it starts looking not very good, you just throw more water on it. And what we were doing is we were just keep on throwing water at it. When they started not looking good, we just throw more water. Well, they must need more water. Well, the reality is that we were overwatering our trees, which made our apples bigger, which you don't want big apples, and they were more watery. They didn't have the sweetness that we are experiencing now because we have a managed managed amount of water, the perfect amount of water it needs to go into that tree, because we know the technology now of what we need to do. I think we were watering, I don't know, I think it was like 5 when we first started. It's been so long now, but it was like every 5 days for like, man, we'd have it on there for at least, sometimes 10 hours, 12 hours, somewhere around there, just soaking them. And then what we figured out was we were watering too much. And so what we ended up doing, because it leaches out of the soil so fast, now what we do is every 3 to 4 days, we're only going for like 4 hours or so, and we just hit with that quick amount. We figured it was right around, we are saving right around 70% to 60% water, less water than we have been using, which is a huge amount of savings. Now water's no big deal. We're in Western Washington. We have all kinds of water. I live right next to it where we pump into it. But and for other areas, this technology would be great. And all these things that we're talking about, and I like to relate those trees to like a body. And what Steve has done with his is that he's given us every nutrient that we need to know, the perfect amount. Think of your own body. If you're drinking the perfect amount of water, if you're having the perfect amount of protein, the perfect amount of everything, then your body is going to be functioning at the optimal rate. And so you're going to have less sickness. You're not going to get sick. You're not going to have any of those other things. And so when we're doing all of this stuff as a farmer, you have the optimal tree. It's not getting sick, less disease because it's not susceptible to disease because it has everything and everything it needs. And so that's what this precision agriculture is doing for the farmer is it's giving it the optimal amount, everything it needs. And we're not overworking, we're not putting too much nitrogen on, we're not doing too much of something or lacking something where the tree now is feeling sick and then it gets susceptible to more and more diseases. And it's just a way of really regulating what the tree and our pumpkins and our strawberries as well. Everything we grow here is now just precise.
Yeah, well said. And shout out to Tektronix and Agronet that are suppliers on the soil moisture sensors and these graphs and the telemetry that goes along with that. You can look them up online. The other key thing, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'll should in the next week or so have a interview and paper published that on a study with Washington State University at one of the Smart Orchard locations in Eastern Washington, where the WSU quantified the difference in quality in the apples where you had these shorter sets or less frequent, more frequent sets for shorter length. And I believe the number is like 40% or so difference in terms of the quality of that fruit in terms of defects and so on. Just absolutely amazing. Okay, so really quickly, on the lending library, this is Linda down at Myra, USA, down in California early in the year.
She's stealing it.
And you can hear the Burrow staff actually starting to get a little spun up about Linda stealing the burrow, and indeed she did. So Snohomish County now has a burrow up in Snohomish County and ready to go as part of the lending library. It can do all sorts of different things, like, as Linda mentioned earlier, haul around fertilizer, haul around fruit, pumpkins, so on and so forth. It's really like this little skid steer type platform. Our intent is to bring on board later on, sometime in the summer, a corridor add-on, as they call onto it, where it does autonomous mowing and brush cutting. It also has a spray. I think it's spray to door or something like that, but basically the ability to do variable rate weed detection and spray applications as well. And then we're also exploring working with AIGen, a capable company based out of Kirkland/Redmond, Washington, that has these little robots that are out doing mechanical weeding. So not actually using any sort of chem application to take care of weeding. So with that, we'll open it up to Q&A. Sorry for running late there, Danny.
No, it's great. Thank you guys all so much for all this information. We don't have a ton of time for questions, so I have just a targeted one for each of you. Sorry that it's not more of an expansive dialogue, but let's start with Linda. So there are a lot of people in the audience today from conservation districts and local jurisdictions who may be interested in replicating some of the programs that you've put together. Maybe you could say a little bit about how it's funded, how it works, and maybe some advice for people who want to add some of this technology to their own lending libraries.
Sure, thank you. Like I said, originally we started this 4 years ago with $1 million of COVID funding, and that was where we set up our trial farm. So one was Nate's, the other on the Snohomish River, the other one was Andrews Hay on the Stillaguamish River. Because of the success of this and the great information that we got, we decided to increase the size of the program. And on our Floodplains by Design grant, I think we're on our third, it was written into the last two grants and funded mainly because of soil health and water quality. If we know how much how much fertilizer to put on and where, we're not going to have the runoff. With the water usage, Nate just said 70% reduction in water. These are all things that are really important to the Department of Ecology, as you all know. And so being able to fund the project through there in a very unique way, where none of this is costing the farmers anything, which makes it very easy for them to adopt the technology. The Floodplains by Design grant pays for all of it, and we've contracted directly with Steve, and so it all runs through there. Floodplains by Design has been very pleased with the program, and we were funded in the last round as well, which will continue this program. So getting involved, I think you just find a place to start. First find your farmer. The farmer has to be willing to be open-minded to, let's see what this technology is. Let's experiment. Our 2 farms were set up as experimental farms. What is the new technology that we could implement on these farms that doesn't exist? And that really opened the door. You get the farmer that knows everybody and says, hey, look at what we're doing. It works. And then everybody's ready to adopt the technology. Talking fast so you can get through.
Yeah, thanks so much, Linda. So that teed us up really well for a question for Nate. So, Linda says you just need to find a farmer, and that may not be so easy all of the time. Of course, it's no small feat to take these measurements and install the sensors. Can you talk a little bit about the return on investment in terms of either yield or input savings, and what you might tell other farmers who are interested in getting started?
You might be muted, Nate. We might have lost him.
Okay, so Steve, let's go to you then. A lot of the data you show sort of supports this score that you're calling leakability, or how likely you are to lose the water and nutrients you put into the soil. Can you talk a little bit about how this can be used to improve fertilizer management, and whether or not you've been measuring any of those outcomes, like nitrogen use efficiency or any of the environmental impacts?
Yeah, like I think as I mentioned earlier, like in this particular project, working with Skagit farmers as a good example, because they have the agronomists on staff to make a prescription based on what they can see. We found that it takes kind of reorientation, not just for the grower, but also for the agronomist. It's kind of thinking about, oh, all right, well, let's apply differently in this section or apply differently in that section. Some of the limitation can be, and often is, well, what equipment is available to apply on a variable rate, and then obviously kind of what mixes do you have of the nutrients that you need to apply. So if I use an example out in Eastern Washington, we've got a grower with tens of thousands of acres of potatoes. And they are using this data they have some really low, extremely low pH levels in areas that based on ammonium nitrate buildup over the years, over the decades. And so they're using it to strategically place lime to get back up into the territory that will support growing. While that, because of the scale of that grower, the quarry ran out of lime. They still were able to really apply it probably maybe over about 20 some odd percent of the land, as opposed to uniformly apply it over the entirety of the land, and apply more where it really counts is kind of the high level. And I just got a text from Nate. He apologizes, but somehow he was disconnected at the end here.
It looks like we got Nate back. So this will be our final question for Nate, if you're still available to answer. So can you talk a little bit about the return on investment and what you might tell a grower who is interested in getting started, but perhaps intimidated or overwhelmed by what's involved?
Oh, Nate, we know you're almost there, bud.
Okay, and perhaps we will get to that question eventually, but we'll pose this as the final question to each of you, and then have to log off for the day. So you three are really on the cutting edge of what's happening in agriculture today, and maybe as our final sentiment, in 1 to 2 sentences, what are each of you most excited about in current agricultural trends? Let's start with Steve.
I think I hate the term, but I'll use it. I mean, it's the democratization of data. So whether it be satellite imagery, which has some usefulness, particularly in that you've got the rear view mirror that you can go back on, or data like we're looking at, whether it be yield or soils, taking that and then being able to tie that to some of these AI tools. Again, in collaboration with an agronomist and the grower to interpret is huge. And then, of course, there's the automation of some of the technology to actually go and tie in both on the data collection itself, as well as the application or the actionability of the data to go and do something about it. So it's a really unique time to have all these pieces converge.
Linda, what are you most excited about in agricultural trends today?
I'm excited that our farmers have the opportunity to do this. This can make such a big difference in the success of farms and the success of farms the size they are here. And usually they don't get this type of attention to be able to say, hey, you've got this available. We want to help you succeed. And I think that's going to make a huge difference. And I think it's going to change the way farmers over here think about what they do and how they do it and what the possibilities are for them. And then the incredible impact it can make on our food system and the food security.
All right, Nate, you can close us out. You can talk a little bit about return on investment for some of the projects that you've been running on your farm, or you can talk about what you're excited about.
We've been real lucky. We've had a really good return on investment. Our apples have been producing way more. Our fields have been producing way more fruit, in which we're looking forward to. I think the big thing with tech and emerging in agriculture here is going back to precision. Being able to know exactly what you need to put into your crop, to just being so exact. It's amazing, and just having that ability, and working with good people like Steve and Linda. That's the most exciting part about it. So without a doubt, thanks for having us.
Thank you, Linda, Steve, and Nate, so much for being here. And thanks, of course, to all the members of the audience today for your time and attention. You will find us here at the same time next week to talk about nitrogen credits and fertilizer budgeting. So we are looking forward to seeing you all then. And thanks again for the panelists for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny and team.
Bye.